Students, let's continue with our yesterday's topic, that is the poem Birches. We have already discussed the first 28 lines, so let's resume from there only. One by one he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them. In these lines, Frost returns to the theme of conquest. The boy subdues his father's trees, riding them until he takes the stiffness out of them, leaving him in lines 31 and 32 absolutely victorious over the trees. Not one was left for him to conquer. The boy's conquest of the trees mirrors the victory of Frost's poetic imagination over the real world. For now his vision has completely supplanted the ice storm as the cause of the tree's condition. One by one he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them. And not one but hung limp, not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon, and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim, and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. The next few lines is a description of the boy's technique for climbing and bending the trees. He has painstakingly acquired such skill, which Frost describes in line 38 as similar to the care that one must take to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. This is an important line. It's a metaphor here which he has used. Frost is here describing a method of reaching beyond the limits of things, like filling a cup beyond the brim, to a realm beyond the real, that is imaginary. This is not just the internal world of his imagination, but something even greater. A theme he will begin to develop more fully in the concluding sections of the poem. Also, the care taken by the boy is similar to the careful construction involved in writing a poem, making the boy's actions in climbing the trees a parallel for Frost's act of creating the poem. Frost begins in the next lines. He writes, "So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I am weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood, where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open." These lines are important, students, just keep in mind. I'd like to get away from the earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me. So all these lines, 6-8 lines, are important from the point of view of reference to context. Frost in this section, he begins with a note of nostalgia. So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. This longing for the simpler days of childhood stands in sharp contrast with the pain of the adult world, which is described as a pathless wood. We as adults, we are busy with our daily schedules. We have become so much materialistic, and we are so much engrossed in the worldliness that sometimes we have to face problems also, and we have to bear the pains and sufferings also. But this section also further develops the theme of the imagined world versus the real world. The boy's birch climbing has been wholly imaginary, a peaceful, playful time when one person can alone remake the world as he imagines. In contrast, the real world lashes out at the narrator, and it is clear that he will achieve no victory over it. Frost now, in line 48, develops his idea of escaping into an imaginary world. I'd like to get away from Earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. However, he also makes it clear in line 52 and 53 that he does not want to permanently escape the world and that such a fate is not even desirable. Why? Because Earth is the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. It is almost as if the limits of the real world must exist in order for the imaginative world to exist. So let's read the last 9 lines first. And half grant what I wish and snatch me away, not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb back branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches. So in the concluding section of the poem, Frost ties these ideas together with the image of the birch trees. The act of his poetic imagination reaching beyond the limits of reality is now likened to climbing the birch tree. The motion of the tree, which allows a person to climb to its top only to bend down and drop him back on the ground, is in fact the way Frost wants his imagination to work, to allow him only to approach heaven and then to bring him back to the real world. This also ties in with the image of filling a cup beyond its brim, which we have read in line number 38. It is possible to exceed the limits of the real world, but only a little bit, or else there is disaster. So the limits of the real world may be painful, but they define one as a person. If it is a solitary existence, it is still existence. Without limits, there can be no love or, for that matter, any other human emotion. Frost thus brings the poem back to the duality he expressed in the first lines of the poem. The real world provides the limits that make his poetry possible. So this is the explanation of this poem, students, and today I'll stop here, and in our next video we'll discuss about the themes of this poem. Till then, thank you.